Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. Hope everyone has had a great weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed watching the Super Bowl and had some fun Super Bowl parties. We've got some good stories to go over this week. A lot around this AI war that is heating up. A lot of AI competition. We've got some news coming out of China. One of their large search companies is launching their ChatGPT rival. We've got a lot of things heating up between Google and Microsoft. And we also have a little AppHarvest update. They're issuing some new stock, and we want to talk about that. But before we do that, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. So the first sponsor that I want to give a shout out to is KY Innovation. So KY Innovation has supported us for the past 2 years now. They've been a great partner, and they have some awesome programs for entrepreneurs in Kentucky. So we're always happy to highlight them and point entrepreneurs in their direction. Evan has taken advantage of those programs through his startup Simba. I know I always hear lots of good praise from the programming over there. So if you're an entrepreneur in Kentucky, be sure to check out their programs. And Evan, would you mind talking about Bolt Marketing?
Yeah, for sure. Bolt Marketing, local marketing agency run by our friend Chase Fairchild, and they help companies with their marketing. So many small businesses and founders are great at building their company, building their products with their expertise, but they might not be the best at marketing. And Bolt helps companies bolster their branding, their social media, their video, whatever it might be. Go see Chase and the team at Bolt if you need help with your marketing.
Absolutely. All right. Did you watch the Super Bowl last night? What did you think?
I did. I thought the game was great up until the last 2 minutes.
Is the NFL rigged?
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't have any conspiracy theories like that. But I thought that was a terrible call there at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can call the Super Bowl like that on something small. And the commercials were terrible. I think the commercials getting worse and worse. I could talk on and on about. I think that they're just focusing too much on celebrities and not like good creative commercials. Like where they had the E-Trade babies, they brought them back. Those are some classics, but I feel like the commercials are more about these celebrities than they are about like just creativity and the brands.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed about commercials is I feel like last year's Super Bowl was the Super Bowl of crypto ads. This year, the trend I saw was lots of brands announcing EVs. So I saw there's a Jeep EV ad, there's a Ram EV ad, there's like a GMC mixed with Netflix EV ad saying that they're going to start using more EVs in their shows and movies. So
that one was again more about Will Ferrell than it was about the cars.
I liked that one. I thought that was funny. I love Will Ferrell.
Ram,
America loves celebrities. What do you expect?
Well, that's not the Super Bowl's commercial is supposed to be more about creative and funny than highlighting a celebrity.
Yeah, I feel you.
What about the halftime show?
Rihanna, she still got it. Is she pregnant?
Sometimes she is. Sometimes you forget about how many hits she has.
She does. Yeah, she's a boss. Let's go over some events real quick. I know we've been hitting on these the past few episodes, but we just want to make sure that the community is aware of some great events coming up. Evan, I'll let you lead that off with the event that you're featured in with Startup Grind.
Yep. So Startup Grind in Louisville is February 15th, so the day after Valentine's. It's at 1020 Craft Brewery in Butchertown. Lisa Bajonas will be interviewing me, just talking about my experience building Simba, Middle Tech, and just my thoughts on the ecosystem overall. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Next one is 5 Across, put on by our friends at Awesome Inc. That is going to be Wednesday, February 22nd. That's going to be from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. 5 entrepreneurs will pitch their businesses for 5 minutes apiece for $5,000 prize. And that's, I believe, a safe note from Keyhorse Capital.
Yep.
The next event is going to be the DevelopLex Happy Hour that our sister brand is putting on. That is going to be Saturday, February 25th. That is going to be at a Constitution Speakeasy. So brand new speakeasy that's opening up in town. We're covering the first $250 of that bar tab. That'll start at 5 p.m. on that Saturday. And then last one here, we have an event that we're partnering with Commerce Lex's Emerging Leaders program on to interview Twyman Clements of Space Tango. We're doing that in the planetarium at the Living Arts and Sciences Center on February 27th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So with that one in particular, that is a private event. So we have, I think, one or two more spots that we can offer to our listeners. Reach out to us if you'd like to attend that one. And then one last reminder before we dive into these stories, be sure to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, follow us at Middle Tech Pod across all socials. so you can keep up with what's going on in the middle tech world. Now, let's dive into some of these stories. We mentioned that the AI war is heating up. And as Google, we mentioned last week that Google was launching their rival to ChatGPT. They did so in a live demo. It messed up. The chatbot did and said something that was factually incorrect, which is not a huge surprise for these models. Even ChatGPT does that. But it erased about 100 million of market cap from Google's market cap. So Evan, give us a little overview of this story, your take on it. Let's dive into some of these AI stories and what's going on in the space right now as competition really ramps up.
Yeah. So to be specific, somebody asked from the Google team, what discoveries from the James Webb Telescope can I tell my 9-year-old about? And I came back and said that the telescope took the very first pictures of exoplanets or planets, which is true. Not correct. So these models, they're not going to be perfect. The brands that are using these models need to make it clear that they're not. This was unfortunate for Google because it was during, a live demo where they were showing off their tech. Everybody was expecting it to be, next level, better than ChatGPT. At least people were hoping it was. Turned out it doesn't look like it is. My thoughts on this, and I like yours, Logan, but I think for one, consumers just need to know and be educated on the fact that these models aren't going to be perfect. They're just basically scraping the entire internet for answers and using a predictive model to put out what it thinks is the best answer. And the way I personally think about interacting with these tools is it's like having a dialogue with a friend or the internet, and you know that the internet is not full of factual, correct information. So it's going to give you stuff back that is not correct. There's not many places you can go on the internet and have a dialogue, or anybody you can talk to in real life and have a dialogue when everything they say is factual. So that's how to think about this, is in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think the live demo screw up is only kind of part of the story here for why investors got a little spooked by this. I think one, it shows as a little bit of a sign of weakness as they go up against Microsoft in this space. But two, I think that investors are likely a little bit more worried about how this is going to disrupt Google's current business model. This is something Evan and I have talked about for a while. And something that I'm really paying attention to right now is the downstream effects of, Google's business model, this digital ad business model that has made them so much money over the years. There are so many other businesses that rely on that to provide them revenue, whether it's, affiliate marketing with, let's say a good example that I heard Microsoft CEO talking about was, let's say you search top 10 TV brands. A lot of the websites that exist that list out those brands are making money by driving consumers to them, having a list that informs top TV brands, and then driving consumers to those websites where they can purchase that. If you're just able to, have AI give you that list rather than one of these websites, how do these websites ultimately make money? Because the information is still out there that they put out there. So that's something I'm paying attention to. That's something I'm directly involved in with the startup that I'm with, Sales River. We see a lot of that business is driven based off the digital ad space. I just think there's going to be a lot of downstream effects of that. I don't know if you've been paying much attention to what's going to go on there, if you have a take on that, Evan, but that's I think that's the biggest risk to Google right now is all of this is just really putting their current business model under threat.
Yeah, it's very disruptive. It's retraining how people interact with the internet. And, Bing, who seems to be on top of the ball here and really competing with Google well, when they surface an answer from their ChatGPT iteration within Bing, they're giving references that lead out to websites. So they're still, when you ask something, showing you, where on the internet you might find that information so you can go to the web page. But it's not likely that people are going to click on those unless it's something that they need a correct answer for and they're going to verify their sources. But this is extremely disruptive. And you're right. I mean, I think that this is going to really, throw a wrench in the whole advertising space, throw a wrench in. I mean, you're having a dialogue versus going out and scraping and looking at sources and links. This could be one of the biggest behavioral changes on the internet we've ever seen.
Yeah, and
this is like mobile.
At the same time, there's all the antitrust stuff going on with Google's ad business in the first place. So it's just It's really no surprise that investors are taking one little thing like this screw up on the live demo and letting it spook them a little bit, because there's just so much tied into what could happen if we truly switch over to this way of collecting information on the internet.
One way to think about how big of a change this is that, we went from computers being desktop based, and then we went to mobile, and that totally changed everybody's behavior. That changed the UX of every app. This is like a third platform shift. The way to think about this, it's not necessarily a hardware shift. It's more of a software shift, and it's of that level of web to mobile.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a good transition to this next story, because in China, China's largest search company, which has been kind of outcompeted by these apps like TikTok, ByteDance rather, that are taking that more mobile approach. They are now launching their own ChatGPT rival. So now we see, not only is this happening in America, this is starting to spill out internationally. We're going to start seeing some competition heat up across the pond as well. So Baidu is, like I said, it's a search giant just like Google is in America. That's what exists over in China, controls a lot of China's internet, along with companies like Tencent, ByteDance, those sorts of things. Baidu is now coming in and taking essentially the same approach that the OpenAI did, taking a large language model. I believe that is called the ERNIE system, large-scale machine learning model that's been trained over several years, and they're launching a ChatGPT rival based off of that. So, Evan, when you see a story like this, what are your initial reactions to it as you see other countries really starting to invest in this technology as well?
Yeah, I'm curious to know the details about what the model is trained on and what they have access to train it on. So China's big disadvantage is that they have walled themselves off from the rest of the internet. Google and Microsoft and these other players have users around the world. And China has, like I said, walled themselves off. And so the users of Baidu, are primarily going to be people in China. And, that's not good for the model. If those people in China want answers about other parts of the world or about other perspectives from this model, they're probably not going to get it. So I'll be curious to know what it's trained on. That is a big disadvantage. I think everybody looks at China and says they have a major advantage from a data perspective, and in some senses they do, with their government being so controlling over some aspects of information. They'll have an advantage, but overall, if you're looking for a good, well-balanced, model that is understanding of the majority of the world versus just one country, I have a feeling they're going to be at a massive disadvantage, which is, again, when it comes to artificial intelligence like this, it's not good.
That's an interesting take. I would have probably initially thought the opposite of, because China's government is so controlling and it's really a walled garden over there, that would have helped at least with the data set that they could train on. But I definitely see that perspective as well.
Well, it's all about how many parameters can you push through it, and how much data can you feed it to learn from. And if they only have data from within their own country, then it's a very limited model. Yeah.
I think my perspective on seeing other countries start really pushing for this, I think this is only going to heat up, grow exponentially from here, because I feel like these countries are seeing this race to an artificial general intelligence similarly to how it was viewed during the nuclear arms race. The first country that can achieve artificial general intelligence is going to have a massive, massive advantage.
Well, and I think about it this way: it's a communist country, and if people in China are interacting with only their slice of the internet, and now all of a sudden they're getting direct answers versus results, they could even want to rebel more. If the government controls something where you get a direct answer, it's worse than if you get a list of links, in my mind. If you're a Chinese person and you're somewhat upset about the fact they control your experience on the internet, you're going to be even more upset when they just give you one answer and you're not sure if it comes from the government or it comes from an internet result. I have a feeling this is maybe going to cause even more disruption to their culture.
Yeah, I feel like we've already kind of seen more disruption than we're used to from China during all of the zero COVID policy lockdowns. We started seeing protests. So it'll be something interesting to kind of watch as we enter into this kind of age of AI, this AI revolution. Seems like there's some new significant news coming out about this literally every day. It seems like it's pretty crazy. Some of that news, another story that we wanted to touch on is Bing and Microsoft Edge. So we've reported that Microsoft has announced that they're going to integrate OpenAI, ChatGPT into their search, into their browser, respectively, Bing and Microsoft Edge. That has now started taking effect. So they released their blog saying, here's exactly what this is going to look like. Here's what it's going to be able to do. They released a wait list and gave some users early access to it. And all sorts of things have kind of transpired since that happened. First thing I want to hit on is this blog that Microsoft put out that kind of details what it'll be like using this new Bing, this new search feature, because Evan and I both said this is going to change the way that we interface with the internet, the way that we get information from the internet. So a couple of the things that just kind of jumped out to me as they're describing how this software is going to work, they lay out here more complete answers. So I want to hit on that one for a second, because this is like the mecca to me of improving the way we get information from the internet. So it says Bing reviews results from across the web to find and summarize the answer you're looking for. For example, you can get detailed instructions for how to substitute eggs for another ingredient in a cake you're baking right in that moment without scrolling through multiple results. So when you think of like Googling something, what they're saying here is like, rather than having to go and click through links and read the article, now this new supplementing search with AI, you're going to be able to just have a summary of the question that you're asking rather than having to go through and find that information yourself, which will be a really powerful thing. And that'll it decreases the latency between having the thought of a question in your head and getting that answer. You're just going to be able to get things a little bit quicker. The other thing that stood out to me is this creative spark part. And this particular point stood out to me because I love travel so much. It says, let's say you need an answer, but you need some inspiration. You can ask it to, create an itinerary for you to Hawaii, for example, and then it can pull up links to book your travel and accommodation. That one seems a little further fetched to me, but good Lord, if they can pull that off, that'll be really, really sweet.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's far fetched when there's so many lists on the internet about what to do in Hawaii, and they summarize them and just rank them based on what each list puts in.
Yeah,
that's not
sick.
That hard of a. I feel like that's not that hard. I mean, think about when we were planning our trip to Costa Rica. I mean, we went to a lot of sites. We watched a lot of YouTube videos, just looking for that list and trying to summarize it ourselves. And we spent a couple hours doing that. So
I wonder if it'll be like like Google Chrome. You have your profile on it. You can kind of like customize your experience on Chrome. I think the ultimate iteration of this is the AI gets to know you, intimately. Like it knows what type of experiences that you like. So when you say, hey, I'm looking for an adventure vacation of some sort, I want to go to this part of the world, help me decide where I need to go and help me book that trip. And then it can know exactly, okay, Logan likes to ski, Logan likes to whitewater raft, Logan likes to hike, and it'll help you, find that trip that is truly suited for you or whatever the experience is. I mean, that's just one use case.
Yeah.
This just seems like such a cool advancement in search and the way that we'll interface with the internet.
Yeah. So like the whole complete answers thing and like diving deep and summarizing topics on the internet. I've been doing this with Simba, where I'll act like I'm interacting with an AI real estate agent to see how effective this is and start to understand the threat for professional services like real estate agents, attorneys. If you work in a professional services industry like real estate, if you're an attorney, you need to be really, really scared, honestly. Like this is game changing for anything where there's like a lot of knowledge out there, a lot of language based professions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
knowledge and language based.
Yeah. Knowledge workers. Again, when that's summarizing stuff like this on the internet, you need to be scared. Now, one thing to consider is that Microsoft, I think, is doing a great job of framing this as a copilot.
Yeah. I love that phrasing.
But the thing is that a lot of people are probably going to delay when they reach out to a professional. You might, when you're going to look for a home or you're learning about how to buy a home, you might go straight to a professional. But if you know that this exists, you might interact with this up until the last minute.
Yeah.
And, you might, and this will probably get to the point where you don't maybe need to talk to a professional and you'll basically get routed to a professional version of these models that, are niche to an industry.
Yeah.
So you might start your conversation on Bing and start asking legal questions. And then one of the results will lead you to a very niche model with proprietary data that is basically an AI attorney. And then you'll finish your journey about whatever you're questioning related to law with that model. So I would imagine that at some point, these models will start to interact with each other, and then it'll just spit you off to one that knows better answers than the general model.
Yeah.
And that's how I envision this happening when it comes to professional services.
Yeah. And I think just to put a cap on that point that you just mentioned there, being, if you're in one of these industries, I don't like the idea of like you should be scared. I think that you should be learning as much as you can right now, because we're in a sweet spot. Like, for example, one of our friends that is an attorney up in New York, he has like literally made himself so much more efficient by just learning how to use ChatGPT in his job. So I would say you should definitely just be paying attention. Like, you should know how you're going to need to adapt into the future once you understand how this technology is going to change your career, your career path.
Well, fear is what drives adoption.
Fear is what drives adoption.
So that's how you need
you
need to be you need to be fearful. If you're not fearful, like, you're not going to have enough urgency to like learn about this stuff.
For sure. I think fear is definitely going to be what drives understanding of it. But yeah, anyway, to put a cap on that story, one last thing that I wanted to mention with this whole idea of introducing AI to its search is that that's caused Bing to jump from like number 125 on the App Store all the way up to, I think it was number 12 on the App Store as of the writing of this article that we're citing here, and number 3 on the utility apps. So, and what we're seeing here is people are paying attention, and people are understanding, I think, the significance of what this is going to become. I mean, it's been a viral sensation here. I think a lot of people are grasping how this is going to change the way they interface with the internet, and we're seeing that evidence in things like a 10x increase in downloads for Bing and for Microsoft Edge.
We talked about this briefly the other night, and I compared this to electricity. This is no different than electricity. It's just going to run in the background. It's going to power our apps. It's going to power new experiences that we interact with every day. We will interact with artificial intelligence, as much as we do electricity, which is throughout the entire day. Every app is going to incorporate language models, incorporate these predictive models. Generative AI will be a part of every app we use, and it's going to be no different than electricity. It's going to be utility. We're going to pay for it in little microtransactions, just like we do electricity, and it's just going to run through our daily lives. That's what this is going to become.
I agree. I think we'll look back on it and we'll be like, what did we do before we had this AI copilot? It'll be like, you really don't remember, which all of us are of the age where we don't remember life before the internet, but same kind of deal. It's introduced and it's going to be near impossible to want to go back. All right, let's move on to this next story. So we're out of the AI conversations here. A local story for you guys, just an update about AppHarvest. They are issuing some new stock. So Evan, you are kind of our in-house finance guy. I'll let you summarize this story, and then we'll give our takes on it and discuss some of the details around this.
Yep. So they're issuing $40 million worth of stock, $1 each. So they're issuing about 40 million shares. This is diluting investors that have already kind of been crushed by the stock. The news station that we got this source from.
WBRD, I think.
Yeah. So Charlie Moyer, who is a finance professor at the University of Louisville, frames this as a Hail Mary. I think that's a good way to put it. They're basically on the brink of bankruptcy. They're trying to make sure that they have enough cash to run throughout the rest of the year, to fund their operations. They've been burning a lot of money, but that's a lot of what it takes to build these facilities. And they framed it as we're going from construction and development mode to now operating and trying to reach profitability. And they need money to kind of reset and get to that point. Although I think the Hail Mary again is a good way to frame this. I've kind of got two thoughts. I think there's two ways to look at AppHarvest, both in hindsight and kind of how do you look at this situation currently. If you're judging, if you're part of the people that are considering buying, this stock that they're issuing, here's a couple ways to think about this. If you look at their historical performance and their ability to operate, it's just not good. And so I kind of look at this in two ways. One, they're a startup and they're going to make startup mistakes. And that's what startups do. And so you need to be gracious from that standpoint. And if you look at it from that standpoint, you probably should also believe that they should not have been allowed to go public at all.
I agree.
I think the SPAC movement is going to be looked at as, I don't know the right word for it. I don't want to say it's on the level of crypto, but it is somewhat on that level because it happened in a time when there was just so much liquidity. There was so much time that people had to just invest in things that they didn't know anything about. And AppHarvest falls underneath that. This is a company that doesn't belong in the public markets. And the public markets, are not a way for people to just raise money for ideas like this. It's supposed to be, especially when retail investors get involved, a forum where these companies go to market and go public through very well-known institutions that are rather trusted. Now, do a lot of companies that go public fail, and do people lose money? Absolutely. But typically companies this early in their life cycle, especially basically pre-product and pre-revenue, don't get to go public. And I think that this company never should have gone public. So again, that's the first way to look at this is a startup. Be gracious because they're going to make mistakes, and that's what startups do. But again, they shouldn't have gone public. The other way to look at this, and this is kind of the more negative framing of this, is this was all inappropriate from the beginning. This borderline negligence. If you look at their estimates and what they actually hit as far as numbers go, I wouldn't be surprised if people look at this and want to sue them. It's already happening. But when you have projections of revenue coming in at $62 million for the year of 2022, but the actual was about $14 million, that's unacceptable. And I think you look at that and say people were making up numbers. And then also same with their losses. They projected a loss of 24 million and ended up being about 108. So those numbers aren't even close. And so if you're an investor, how do you trust them to want to buy more stock like this? So that's kind of the more negative approach of this. Again, as a startup founder, I'd rather look at this and say, this is a company still trying to figure it out. You're going to make mistakes. But I think those are the only two ways you can look at this. There's really not a super positive spin on this.
Yeah. I think it all just kind of comes back to the SPAC movement for me. I think we're going to look back at that and be like, what the hell were we thinking at this period in time? I think that's just one of the zero interest rate phenomenons that we saw. And essentially what that did, Evan's talking about it operating like a startup. Those two things are misaligned. You're not supposed to be a public company if you're startup-esque and you have not figured things out and figured out how to, essentially be a profitable company. I know we still see companies that are not profitable going public, but essentially what you're doing, if it's still a startup, is as a retail investor, you're now taking on the risk, even at a disadvantage to what a VC would be. A VC is going to get better terms than if you're buying it from a public offering like what they did. So I think it's just something that I think the government needs to step in and say SPACs can't be a thing because it's just a way to go public without the normal scrutiny of, going public the traditional route. Yeah. So I think it's a phenomenon that we're going to see stay in kind of that zero interest rate era that we saw during COVID. And honestly, good riddance. It's allowed for, AppHarvest is not the only one that's done this. There's, hundreds of companies that went public via SPAC and then just got destroyed in the public markets.
I'll be curious who ends up buying these shares. There's a reason that they're issuing shares. They're not, dipping back into debt markets. They're not dipping, back into private equity, for instance, or any of these other channels of raising money. I'll be curious if they do any more leasebacks or if they, liquidate certain assets. That was mentioned that they could do. So I'll be curious to see how they raise additional funds. But I'll be curious, who is buying these shares? Is it going to continue to be retail investors that, are buying into this environmental ESG movement? I think, unfortunately, for environmentalists that, want to have some kind of activist and socially responsible investing, I think what we saw coming out of COVID was, it's very vulnerable investors. They're investing based on, ideals versus, balance sheets. And, that's a vulnerable place to be. And it turned out that they got burned. So I'll be curious who buys it this time. Is it going to be that same group of people? Or is it going to be a different group that, might have some other motive to invest in this, but there's not really a motive from an execution standpoint to buy this company. So I don't know who's going to be in the market for that.
Yeah. So this public offering, I think I saw the share price was going to be set at $1. It's compared to what it went public at. it was around like $30 or something like that.
Well, no, I mean,
I know it's not comparable, but just to see like
it got
where
up
they're
to like
valuing the company now versus
$40.
it's
At one
crazy.
point, yeah.
It's crazy. And then just to kind of recap some of the recent updates we've made about AppHarvest lately, this is just kind of the latest in them trying to not run out of cash, essentially. So back in December, we talked about them selling its Berea facility in a sell leaseback transaction for $125 million to Masterdarty, which is their distributor. So just kind of the latest saga in them trying to stay afloat, keep cash coming into the business. So we'll see.
Yeah. One maybe positive comparison here is, Tesla went through similar. They almost went bankrupt several times during the downturn in 2008, 2009, around that time frame. Mm-hmm. Another big, highly capital intensive project. However, that is a totally different scenario where there's a lot more demand for their product. They had way more control over their supply chain, over their distribution of their product, margins. Tesla had way more control over that situation. But, if you study business at all, many companies come to the brink of failure and bankruptcy, and hopefully they can come out the other side.
Yeah. I think to end this story, as we always like to do, just end it on a positive note, we are in no way rooting against AppHarvest. We're just trying to provide transparent updates of what's going on with this company. It'd be incredible if they managed to turn it around. We're just trying to be real about it. So that's the latest AppHarvest update. Moving on to our last segment here, which is AI Edge, giving you tips to gain an advantage with AI, with artificial intelligence. This week, we talked a ton about the headlines that are going on in the space, so we won't have any headlines to summarize other than the ones that we discussed. But we do have one tip of the week for how to use ChatGPT to summarize articles and even books, or even if it's like a jargon-heavy document of some sort, a legal document. That is one of my favorite ways to use ChatGPT. So to give an example of how I use that in my week-to-week workflow, especially for Middle Tech, let's say we have a podcast that we recorded, we transcribe all of our podcasts. What I can do is go and take that transcription, copy that, paste it into ChatGPT, and say, write podcast description about this episode. And it does that excellently. So also a good way to do that is if you're signing legal documents, you want to know what it's actually saying in plain terms, copy and paste that legal document over into ChatGPT, say, hey, explain this to me like I'm 5. And it does a fantastic job doing things like that because you're giving it that prompt that already has all the information in it, and you're just saying, hey, like restructure this, re-explain this to me, summarize it. So that is a great way for anybody that has to do a lot of reading in their job or has to take long articles or books and be able to have a comprehensive understanding of them. This is just an easy way to take that, have it kind of digest it down into a more digestible summary for you.
Yeah. So I did that with these AppHarvest stories whenever they release their 8Ks, whenever they release, any SEC filings, I throw them in ChatGPT and say, summarize it. And it gives me, a quick paragraph or a list of what I should know from those filings. So I do that for these updates. I keep track of companies doing that. It's a good way to learn.
Yeah. And we've started doing, you might want to talk about just this AI Edge newsletter that we plan on starting in the blogs we start doing with it, because we use ChatGPT to kind of summarize what we talk about in this section to then create an article that supplements this AI Edge part. So I think that's just an interesting kind of thing to discuss around it too. Other than that, I think that's all we got for you guys this week. So short AI Edge, but try it out. Let us know how it works for you. I think it could really benefit a lot of people in a lot of different industries. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hope everyone has an awesome rest of their week, and we will see you next week.